welcome, and happy Women's History Month. By the time this is posted, it will be the last day of Women's History Month, but let's be real, that doesn't mean much of anything. I mean, any time of year is a good time to celebrate women. Still, I love me some traditions, and one tradition on this channel is that we celebrate HERSTORY. If you want to see what I've done in the past for HERSTORY, I'll tag my playlist for this somewhere on the screen around here. This year for HERSTORY, I've been inspired by the 1990s riot girl culture. I've always loved girl punk. I mean, it's great to let out some feminine rage every once in a while, but right now the state of feminism seems to need this attitude once again. We need to unleash our rage. That's why this year for HERSTORY, I researched riot girl zines, the artifacts of femme rages past, present, and future, and I made my own zine so we can learn about our feminist roots and find inspiration in our riot girl ancestors. So let's get into the video. To start, let's define what zines are, just in case you didn't know. Zines are self-published DIY magazines or pamphlets that are created for little or no profit. Within zines lie the rantings of the author whose rage seeks to be heard. Zines themselves are meant to look chaotic, but don't be mistaken, as they are very intentionally put together. As a form of punk media, zines reflect their disruption of mainstream media by being imperfect and disorderly. Zines are a form of participatory media, or media created by consumers rather than by the corporate culture industries. With the rise of the internet and proposed death to print culture, there have been debates over whether zines are a print-only media, or if digital zines could be just as effective. Many of the authors whose books I read on this topic were fervently against this idea, arguing that zines are paper media only. They argue that physical zines show the passage of time better through like the yellowing of paper and stuff, and that physical media better facilitates human connection than digital media. Zines are traditionally traded and are made to form communities with like-minded individuals. Some authors also cite the dedication and effort that go into making print media. There is an intentionality in every step that's not available in blogs, where most of the time the graphics are predetermined for you. Still, some zinesters have attempted to bridge this gap, as we'll see later in the video. Now, 1990s feminism has been labeled third wave feminism. As a review, first wave feminism came with women's suffrage and lasted from about 1850 to the early 1920s. Second wave feminism fought for the freedom of the housewife and lasted from late 1960s through the 1980s. As stated by Alison Pipemeyer, third wave feminism was shaped by and responded to a world of global capitalism and information technology, postmodernism and postcolonialism, and environmental degradation. As a response to all these world changes, riot girls and 90s feminists focused on ideas of sex and pleasure, race and ethnicity, and the contradictions within popular culture. When the riot girl movement took off in the 1990s, it emerged from the masculine culture of punk rock. The story of riot girl's start goes a little something like this. In 1991, young women in Olympia, Washington, and Washington, D.C. were working to create a space within punk where young women could unleash their brand of feminism. These women wanted to move out of the margins and create a safe space to discuss issues like rape, abuse, racism, sexism, and anything else that was considered too taboo by their male punk counterparts. Molly Newman of the band Bratmobile decided on the name Riot Girl when she was thinking of the name for her zine. She noted that she originally wanted to name the zine Girl Riot, but changed it to Riot Girl with the 3 R's to indicate like growling. Riot Girl maintained similar punk attitude like rebellion, individualism, free thought, anti-capitalism, and anti-establishment, but with a femme flair. Something from punk culture that shows up frequently in zines is this idea of commodifying suffering, meaning punks found value in their experiences of suffering, although some have disputed the significance of this. During the era of third wave feminism, riot girls used zines as methods of communication for third wave feminist ideas. It's important to note that while this was definitely a youth-led movement, the zines that arose from this movement should not be trivialized, but viewed as legitimate methods of communication. Zines are a place where girls could interpret and interject their perspectives on modern events. It's where their voices could be heard. Some people might situate zines in the historical culture of punk rock, but the brilliant and amazing Alison Pipemeyer in her book, Girl Zines, cares to differ. In her book, she argues that the predecessors of zines are actually similar informal publications that emerged in the prior 2 waves of feminism. She notes that riot girl zines should not be viewed as a rupture from the masculine culture, but a continuation of over 100 years of feminist participatory media. Examples of this feminist media begin with women's scrapbooks of the 1800s. Some characteristics are the cut and paste style that highlights feminist poetry, newspaper articles on feminist events, and occasional editing of mainstream publications. What's interesting is that women would pass these around in their circle of friends, thus sharing this information in the same ways that riot girls did in the 1990s. Some other examples come from health pamphlets of the 1910s. In 1914, Margaret Sanger made the first women's health newspaper on contraception called the Birth Control Review, where she encouraged her audience to fight for the right of control over their bodies. For example, Margaret states, "The struggle will be bitter, it may be long. All the methods known to tyranny will be used to force the people back into the darkness from which they were striving to emerge. The time has come when those who would cast off the bondage of involuntary parenthood must have a voice, one that shall speak their protests and enforce their demands. Too long they have been silent on this most vital of all questions in human existence. The time has come for an organ devoted to the fight for birth control in America." And later in the pamphlet she stated, "Woman has always been the chief sufferer under this merciless machinery of the statutory law. Humbly, she has borne the weight of man-made laws, surrendering to their tyranny even her right over her own body. For centuries, she has been the helpless victim of excessive childbearing. Meekly, she has submitted to undesired motherhood. She no longer pleads. She no longer implores. She no longer petitions. She is here to assert herself, to take back those rights which were formerly hers and hers alone. If she must break the law to establish her right to voluntary motherhood, then the law shall be broken." This is some powerful language, and it emulates the same passion and anger that riot girls did. In fact, her actions were so radical that she had to leave America for Europe for a few years, until her husband was later arrested for passing out her pamphlets on her behalf in America. Even more, Margaret wrote the Birth Control Review to educate her fellow females on information that was completely relevant to them but was not available in mainstream media. Another example of this was activist Mary Ware Dennett. In 1915, Mary was distraught at the fact that there was no informational material on sexual anatomy for her sons, so she made it herself. In her book, The Sex Side of Life: An Explanation for Young People, she wrote all about reproduction and reproductive organs. However, unlike Margaret's pamphlet, bookstores picked this one up very quickly, and it was sold nationwide. Once again, a woman took advantage of the information available and provided it to her community herself. Fast forward to the 1970s, as second-wave feminists used to mass-produce informational pamphlets, leaflets, and broadsides with mimeographs, or the copy machine pre-Xerox. These were distributed similarly to riot girl zines, as they were often passed out at rallies, similar to zines being passed out at concerts. This participatory media is important because it allowed women to circumvent popular culture and punk culture, both of which policed their ideas. Zines show strategic representations of how women wanted to present themselves and their ideas to the world. Female identity has always been a mended, chopped up mess of ideas on femininity and womanhood. Thus, the riot girl zines reflect the same mentality. By using their agency in their writing, young women were able to create authentic depictions of themselves, the whole disheveled, contradictory, chaotic mess. Characteristics of riot girl zines follow similar trends of zine culture, but with a femme twist. Zines generally rely heavily on collaging popular magazine and newspaper clippings, artifacts of mainstream culture, to assert their marginal views on them. Riot girl zines tend to do this in playful ways, like with contradictory visual imagery and cheeky uses of profanity. Young women use the shock of profanity and violence to draw attention to certain topics. Readers of zines were meant to be active audience members, not passive. The use of contradictory imagery is best seen with the repeated use of Hello Kitty. The use of girlhood imagery in zines is often referred to as kinder horror or kitten with a whip. The goal of this imagery is to call on familiar images of girlhood like butterflies, hearts, and dolls to emphasize the gendered similarities within the riot girl community. They were also used as a strategy to make their message more palatable. Examples of this girlhood and bonding is seen in the zine Roller Derby, where the author Lisa Crystal Carver spent 3 pages on obsessions and fantasies of the Fabio. This community is crucial to Riot Girl's mission. To quote some letters about Riot Girl from the Riot Girl zine anthology, one girl wrote, "Riot Girl is so many things and has so much potential. We are a support and open and covert action group for any and all girls and women. We are coming together in full force because we know the world treats us like little girls, dumb sluts, stupid whores, ugly bitches, old maids, helpless creative property. While another wrote, I have only been to one Riot Grrrl meeting, but it was the first time in my life I have had a discussion with a large group of people I didn't know, which didn't involve men trying to force their opinions on me, or laughing at my opinions, or worse of all, not caring about my opinions but laughing at the way I look, or the way I sit, or my style of dress. Ideas of freedom were at the center of Riot Grrrl meetings. Women felt free to express themselves and sought ways to gain more freedom outside their meetings. Zines also bridged the gap between the queer community and Riot Grrrls through conversations on body image. Trans women and cis women both struggled with the 1990 ideas of skinny beauty. Trans women and cis women felt free to write about not feeling beautiful and how they learned to empower themselves. One famous example of a body positive zine is I'm So Fucking Beautiful, where the author Nomi Lamb argues that fat oppression is a form of institutionalized oppression. The final and most important topic discussed in zines was sexual violence. Zines are a safe space for young women and girls to bridge the intimate and the public by openly writing about experiences of rape, incest, and other acts of sexual violence. As they engaged in this topic material, they were able to control the narrative of sexual violence and confront myths about rape culture, such as what you wear provokes a rapist. To show a few examples, one girl wrote a letter saying, maybe you could come to a meeting and I would meet you and you would say, I don't want to walk home by myself. So I would walk with you, and we would be in a gang, because we were fighting all the time on the streets for our lives, so walking together, we are a kick-ass girl gang, yeah. This one night, at a Riot Grrrl meeting, some girls started talking about all these rapes that started happening at the college here. We got so mad at the total way the school and the media ignore sexual abuse and harassment, and how shitty it is to live in fear. So we made up a secret plan and carried it out that night. We laughed and held hands and ran around in the dark, and we were the ones you should be looking out for. In a girl gang, I'm the knight, and I feel I can't be raped, and I feel so fucking free. Their community relieved them from the pressure of the patriarchy. Their community empowered them to embrace who they are, trauma and all. These topics eventually led to the production of self-defense zines. In these zines, authors shared resources on hotlines, laws, and actions in the case of rape. They also shared tips and tricks to physically defending oneself, noting that self-defense is self-care. So let's look at some more examples of zines so that we can get a better idea of the aesthetic and content across the board. Starting with the zine Riot Grrrl, the aesthetic is generally pages written on a typewriter or handwritten and many black and white images of attractive, powerful women. The content focuses more on violence and self-awareness, two very different contents outside of the punk context, but within it tracks. Interestingly, Riot Grrrl wasn't consistently written by the same girls, and the authorship rotated frequently. Another example is I Heart Amy Carter by Tammy Rae. This specific zine is from December 1992, and the aesthetic is particularly girly and playful. It is printed on bubblegum pink paper and, like Riot Grrrl, varies from being written on typewriter and handwritten. Tammy also used X's to make a border, pasted in newspaper clippings and comics. Her content is centered around her obsession with Amy Carter, Jimmy Carter's daughter, and celebrates Tammy's romantic love of Amy. Our final example is Bikini Kill. Again, we see typewriter font and handwriting, collages of pictures and vintage drawings. And the content of Bikini Kill's zine is mostly about feminism and dealing with abusive men. They state, we are trying to find that magic word that will change their minds, make them see. It is not our responsibility to explain how boys or men are being sexist any more than it is our responsibility to prevent ourselves from getting raped. This is especially hard because we have internalized sexism to such an extent that it's not just an issue of us explaining it to them, but also an issue of us explaining ourselves to ourselves and to each other. Here we can see the poignancy and ability of the young woman to communicate third wave feminist ideology in their publications. Some zines even revisit similar themes as feminists in the 1910s, such as the case in the zine Fucktooth, where the author Jen Angel discusses women pelvic exams and do-it-yourself at-home bodily exams. Of course, no movement is perfect, and 90s Riot Grrrl came with some critiques. The first was that Riot Grrrl was racist. It is true that the punk movement was rather segregated by region. In the Pacific Northwest and Northeast, Riot Grrrl was heavily white, while in the Southwest, Riot Grrrl was heavily Latina. However, in these white regions in particular, punk's commodification of suffering included white guilt, and in turn perpetuated racism. Even more, many white Riot Grrrls dealt with their guilt by practicing colorblindness or educating those in need, as if the girls of color didn't already know about activism. In this rhetoric, white girls didn't address the reality that it is a privilege to be an activist and feel comfortable sharing your ideas. As Rebecca Buchanan wrote in her book, Writing a Riot, Riot Girl Zines and Feminist Rhetorics, in most cases of social change, the power to leave or change the situation and the terms to define the situation are not created by those who are abused. Still, this isn't to say that girls of color didn't have a voice, as zines also provided them the ability to share their perspectives on this issue. For example, Mimi Nguyen in her zine Slander discussed her rage surrounding the question, "Where are you from?" While this may seem like a question of innocent curiosity, she argues that it is instead a power statement that emphasizes otherness and privilege. Another critique of the movement was whether riot girls were actually resistant or complicit. By supporting freedom in one's sexuality and cosmetics, some argued that the movement was not resistant to femme stereotypes. However, this was just the status quo of women in the 1990s. The idea that women should be modest and feminists should be ugly was a normal line of thought, and riot girls were intentionally fighting that with their zines. By writing their zines, riot girls took a world of cynicism and believed that things could get better. Hello, it's a new day, and I got more information for you. So in order to assess the current state of zines, I have 4 zines currently. I'm still waiting for one to come in, so hopefully it comes in before this video posts and I can add this later, or that section later. But I have 4 that I got from Etsy, one of which I'm waiting for, and then one from my university for free. The types of zines I was able to find were similar to Riot Girl zines. A lot of them were like queer zines and feminist zines, and they all have that like similar Riot Girl vibe. They are both still heavily DIY, and they emphasize collaboration and community. However, modern zines have definitely taken advantage of the technology available today, and they're using more like digital layout than physical media. While I think that this is still successfully getting the DIY idea across, and I admit it's a lot cheaper to produce, I feel like the digital zines still lack that spontaneity that comes with bricolage and having like only this like materials that you have in front of you, you know? But I will also say that because of technology, a lot of zines have been digitized now, and that's really the only way I was able to do this project, so go technology in that regard. So let's look at some examples of modern day zines. 2 out of the 4 zines I have are made digitally, so you'll be able to see what I was talking about. The first of these is the Muchacha Mini number 3, Girls Will Be Girls by Daisy Salinas. Aesthetically, the zine was produced on glossy colored paper, which I was actually surprised to see. Considering all the zines that I had interacted with were produced on like black and white printer paper, it was very surprising to see not only the color, but also the glossiness. So it was very much well worth its price on Etsy. This zine is quarter sized, and all of the designs have like intricate patterns and some cool pictures of some pretty awesome ladies. And the content of this zine is a collection of biographies of Palestinian women who at some point or another fought the Israeli state, and it was produced right after the invasion of the Gaza Strip. And traditionally, Daisy has labeled this zine as, quote, a native Chicana feminist fanzine, and I think that's pretty cool. So go Daisy, I love what you're doing. The next zine that was digitally made is by a group called Insurgent, and it's called Magical Girls. This zine was made in fall 2024, and it deals with topics surrounding femininity and how femininity intersects with queer identities. It has a lot of digitally drawn like imagery of like My Little Pony characters and like pseudo anime characters. And because it was written in fall 2024, it also has a lot of information about the presidential election and misogyny that was surrounding the election. This one's also printed on glossy paper. It's full size, so it's 8 by 10. And what's crazy is that I found it for free. Like in the building I work in, it was just like sitting there in a pile of like in a stack. So I'm like, who is your investor? Please tell me, because man, they are loaded, and I would like some of that. The next zine wasn't digital, but again, like I'm going crazy. So many of these zines, it was printed on glossy paper in color. Again, do I just like not understand how much glossy paper and color ink costs? I feel like I do. But anyway, this next one is called This Zine Will Turn You Trans. I don't know who the author is. All I know is their Etsy handle. I wasn't able to fully like get in contact with them on Etsy. I think they thought I was a bot. So nice. This zine is awesome. It's hot pink, it's super bright, and it's almost exclusively handwritten. Like Muchacha, this is a collection of biographies, but it's about trans individuals instead. What I found really cool about the scene is that it's resistance through information. From what I learned, there are a lot of high-profile trans individuals that have existed throughout history, but once they were outed, they then had to kind of like fade into the periphery. But just knowing about them, period, helps to normalize that trans people are all around us and have always existed around us. The final zine I got was Get Down Ladies by Christy of Whimsical Press. And this zine is more of what I think of when I think of Riot Grrrl zines. It's printed with black and white ink on printer paper, and it has a purple cover and white pages. This one has a lot of cut and paste from magazines and a lot of drawings. It's mostly typed out, but there is some handwriting to go with the drawings. And content-wise, this is a queer zine. It has a film review on a queer documentary, and it has a featured article by a visiting author called Songs That We Wish Were Queer. And something I found really cool about Christy's zine was that there's a call to contribute on the back page. So it really emphasizes that community. This is very clear even when you talk to Christy, which I was able to do. That's right, I talked to a real zinester, whoop whoop. So let's go check out the meeting I had with her.
So, hello.
Hi.
If you wanted to just start by introducing yourself and your zine and like what you do.
My name is Christy and I run an independent publishing house called Whimsical Press. And my zine that I publish is called Get Down Ladies. And it's a feminist queer zine, which I started in 2021. I started publishing monthly, and then I kind of stopped for a while, and now I'm getting back into it, and I'm going to do it quarterly, kind of seasonally. I have a bachelor's degree in journalism, and I always wanted to be a music journalist, so I just decided to be one. I love, especially, seeing women and non-binary people and queer people and trans people. Like, I love just seeing that representation, and I just felt like I wasn't seeing it enough, so I wanted to create something to show that. One of my favorite genres of music is riot grrrl music. So I really got into riot grrrl like mid to like 2010s. Fast forward to I think it was pandemic, and I saw someone named Jolie Ruin somehow online, like looking through riot grrrl stuff, found that she was republishing Kathleen Hanna's original zines from the 90s. So I immediately ordered them and started reading through them, and I just was consuming them and going, I can't believe like she thought of this, like she and her community. And it just inspired me so much. I was like, oh my God, so anybody can do this. Anybody can do this, Okay, so during the pandemic, I was married to a man, and I was a stay-at-home mom with two small children. Like many people during the pandemic, it just gave us time to think about our life. I was just like, why am I drawn to like the queer movement so much? I told my husband, I was like, I think maybe I'm bisexual. And he was like, well, what do you want to do with that information? And I was like, I think I want to just like connect to my community more. I don't know. I don't really know. It was like there was this little spark in me, and I didn't know what to do with it. Since it was the pandemic, it was a lot of like digital connecting with people. So I started like trying to meet people online, trying to talk to people, watching documentaries. Like I told everybody, it was like a research project on myself. I'm learning in the queer community, especially among lesbians, when you are friends, sometimes you're not just friends. Like people will put on dating apps like friends. And I've learned since then that like, that's kind of just like a ease into it. So I met what in our world we call our catalyst. And so my catalyst, I met on Bumble BFF. So I was talking to her, and it turned kind of romantic. After talking to her and just kind of feeling feelings that I didn't, like I knew that I needed to leave my marriage. Like I knew that my husband would never be okay with opening the marriage. I needed to experience being with women. Like this was a huge part of me. So that was like the hardest decision of my entire life.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I had kids, and he is right now and has been my best friend. And I love that we've kept that. Like we are still best friends. We figured out like, he's like, okay, if we're getting a divorce, then you have to get a job. Like I didn't have a job. I was a stay-at-home mom. So I say all that to say that I started the Etsy shop and the blog as a way to earn money while I was looking for a job. I had never been to therapy at that point. It ended up being my therapy. And I would just sit and put my headphones on and listen to Riot Grrrl and just like I let it guide me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it kind of became a way for me to express my sexuality So basically now I identify as a lesbian, and that again is my way of supporting and connecting with that community. To do this zine, I want to amplify other women and other queer voices, and I think to me that's the most important thing that I can do to like help the community. That's a great question. And actually, I met a friend of my ex-girlfriend who teaches visual media up at a university here called Kennesaw State University.
Okay.
And she asked me to come talk to her class about how to make zines. So I actually flyers for her class. My biggest advice to people is literally just be authentic. If you think it's a dumb idea, it's not a dumb idea, because there are people out there who have the same ideas and live the same life, and they want to hear somebody else talk about it, and they want to be connected with those people. Ask your friends for submissions. What do you want to share with the world? And that's what I wanted to say. Like, what do you want to share with the world? Whatever you want to share, there is a community out there for you.
Welcome back. So right after this meeting, I was so inspired to get started on my zine. As I was typing some of the content for my zine, the ideas came pouring out of my mind. It was like they were waiting to be acknowledged all along, and it was so much fun to write. I must admit, I got pretty sassy and cheeky with my writing, and I think that's one of my favorite parts of my whole zine. You see, if I learned anything from this process, it's that zine making is about being authentically yourself. And while I think I'm already pretty authentic, there have been times when I've had to bite my tongue and keep my opinions to myself. But with my zine, it's really reassuring to know that I can just leave everything out on the table and not worry about what I was saying or how I was saying it. The ability to be honest and authentic was really freeing. Okay, welcome to the floor. This is where my picture is. I have some fabric. I read that you can photocopy fabric. This is the spirit of collaging. You will work on something to the point where you just start thinking in collage, and then you just get everything that you think might work, and you go from there. So I have this crochet thing that I think would be sick to be on the back of something. So I'm gonna put that on there. And then I also have a couple other things. I have these sewing patterns too that I found that I think will be really fun. This is a printout. I think it's gonna look cool. These are full of collaging supplies that I've been collecting for the past month. So really quickly, I'm gonna show you. I have newspaper, children's books and magazines, whole bunch of stamps like this one, stickers, Fruity Pebbles. These are all the cereals we made the past 2 weeks. Printouts. I have this. I don't know what I was expecting to do with this coffee sleeve. Oh, I found this in one of the books. Oh, Adam's about to come in and make fun of me.
Hello, governor.
I thought you were gonna make fun of me.
Hello, messy lady.
Yeah, it's very overwhelming. So I think what I'm gonna do is just cut out all of the things that I want to include, and then that way it'll be easier to visualize where things will go. So, time-lapse time. Okay, so I have everything broken up into sections. There are words over here, a pile of cutout images, and then these are all patterns that can go in the background. And then of course I have all my stamps here, stickers underneath all this. I'm gonna start cutting this stuff out. When I got to collaging, it was the same thing. I mean, I'm very clearly a creative person, have you looked at my channel? And I think that part of that is that same idea of being able to express myself. I'm also obsessed with organization, and oddly enough, collaging for my zine was chaotic organization, an oxymoron, I know, but if you know, you know. I love this process so much, and I was desperate to do it all over again when I finished. I got some zines. These are mine. I'm so excited, y'all. So this is my zine. Her name is Miscreant. It's spelled miscreant, but it's pronounced miscreant because it's awesome and I'm really cool. And She Devil, if you don't know who this is, look her up. She Devil is the mascot. So I have like a lot of, it took me about 1 day to type out all my ideas. By a day, I mean like 2 or 3 hours. And then it took me like a full day to, to collage everything. Yeah, I like put some really honest stuff in here. There are some really sassy parts. Like I'll show you my food for thought page on the screen here. I've been told a lot of really stupid stuff before, especially like when I was going to church. Christians just love saying the most absurd things. This is what you could get if you get my zine. But yeah, I'm really excited. I printed it on this cool like pink printer paper. So basically like the topics that I cover in my zine are like rules that men have written, that's one of them, about broken families, about reducing waste and stop buying from freaking Amazon, and what pro-choice really looks like, and about how people should take me seriously. This is a feminist zine. Pros of this whole process, it's freaking awesome. Like look at the back page. I feel like I'm the coolest person ever for having made this, and it was so easy to make. Like please let me make more because I feel awesome. Cons, I would say that printing is a huge hassle. I have all of the original, which I think is actually a really cool thing that I want to show you guys. Like I have the original pages that I collaged on that you probably saw in the collaging video, but like this became this, and there was a page in the food for thought actually, but these colors, I'm learning a lot about like color theory when it turns to black and white. I feel like there's just so much that I didn't understand. Like I thought that these were different enough colors because they're like purple and teal, but even with the sun on it right now, like you can kind of barely see this tea. And when it showed up on the master copy, which I did on white paper with grayscale, it was like already not showing up. And then when I did this one, I think that they did it in like a monochromatic, so it's even more intense with the contrast, and that just made it so much worse. Like you could not see these letters and I had to kind of outline them. Yeah, just like learning about like how stuff shows up has been really interesting and also frustrating because I had like this like image of how everything was gonna look, and then some of the pages, like if you get it, I have a picture of Trump kissing Putin in here, like right here, and you can only see it if you look really closely. So if you didn't watch this video before you read this zine, you're gonna be like, who is that? And then you'll realize and you'll be like, oh my gosh, get this image out of my head. Putting it in the right order so that it would be a booklet it literally broke my brain, and I got mad at Adam for no reason. Like that's how, and I don't get angry very often, but I was just getting like so frustrated. I put this in order so that it would open the way that the zine would open. And then when I was like going and I scanned everything and then I put it into my computer and I was trying to like move it around in the PDF, like in preview, and oh my god, like I would print something and then I would try to do the opposite side and it wouldn't work, and I was sitting here like freaking out because I kept wasting ink, and I went through an entire thing of black ink. So it was way more labor intensive than I thought after the collaging process. You have to fold every paper. And then I found this cool hack where once you fold it, you get like 2 books, and then you like put this in the middle. So there's a book here and a book here, and then you staple down, and then you just like fold the staples down. So that's how I stapled it. Thank you, WikiHow. It didn't take me a super long time. I think I just didn't anticipate having so much labor afterwards. There's like pros and cons to it, but I think like regardless, like the cons don't even come close to the pros. Like the pros super outweigh the cons, and I've really loved this process nonetheless. I just kind of wanted to be honest because I feel like not a lot of people have the opportunity to talk about that printing process. So if you want to purchase my zines, please do. I put a lot of effort into this. There were a couple times when I was like working on my zine or editing the video and I was like, am I wasting my time? Like, I have barely 200, like if 200 subscribers. If you're interested, please check it out. I really put my heart and soul into like this specifically. They're gonna be listed on Etsy. I'm gonna be charging for shipping, but the listing price is going to be $5, and all of the proceeds are going to be going to transgender.org. And if you don't know what transgender.org is, it is an informational safe space for trans individuals that is working to spread information and end trans hate. Basically, they were founded because there was like a few years ago, there was a Reddit blackout where all trans information and trans sites were being taken down. And so this group, it's like a whole grassroots organization. This group decided to get together and form this website, and they found out that the domain transgender.org was free for them to use, not free monetary wise, but like it was open for them to use. And so they took advantage of it, and now they've been working to spread information that's helped transgender people across the country. If you're interested, please buy my zine, and you might even get a really cool envelope in the process. I tend to have a lot of fun mailing stuff. Looking ahead for zines, I did write issue 1 on this and I also put limited edition at the top because I like to confuse people. I think that I actually really want to do this again. I do know that I really need to focus on my thesis right now though, so I think I'm gonna make it seasonal at first, especially because it's already hard enough to do YouTube, and to also do this zine and to do my thesis would just be way too much work. So I'm gonna wait. It's probably gonna be a regular thing. So if you like it, please respond. I do have my address on the first page, so if you get one, mail me that you like it, comment below that you like it if you don't want to send me mail. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment below, do whatever you can to engage with this video because I would really appreciate it. This was like so many steps of a process, but it was so worth it, and I really enjoyed it and had so much fun learning about the history of zines, the current state of zines, how to make a zine, all of this stuff. And if you're interested in making a zine, please do it. It's so much fun. And send me one. I'll pay for it. I'll do whatever. Email me, send me your listing or whatever. Like, I think that this is such a cool thing, and I think that this is gonna be helpful to building community. So get involved and, you know, do it yourself. It's so easy. I think that's the end of the video. So bye.